For those of you just joining us, welcome. Today's webinar is entitled IPSB and Excel AI's Radically Simple Search Webinar with Mardia from IPSB and Sam from Excel AI. Time during the webinar, for any questions or any comments, feel free to ask in the comment section below and we will answer at the end of the session. Those of you just joining us, welcome. Today's webinar is entitled IPSB and Excel AI's Radically Simple Search Webinar with Mardia from IPSB and Sam from Excel AI. Today's webinar, a recorded version of this webinar will be available after this session on our social media pages as well as our website at ipsb.com.my. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning everyone. Welcome to today's session of IPSB and Excel AI's Radically Simple Search webinar. My name is Alia Zainal from IPSB Technology. Thank you for tuning in. 2 weeks ago, on the 11th of November 2020, IPSB and Excel officially announced our partnership, which actually kickstarted in 2013 at the International Broadcasting Convention, IBC, in Amsterdam. I'd like to introduce today's presenter. We have Mardia Nasir, Director and VP of Sales, IPSB Technology from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and also Sam Bogosh, CEO of Excel AI from Boston, USA. We are here today to solve issues in the surge of media assets in the media and entertainment, education, and healthcare industry. For this, please welcome Mardia.
Thank you, Alia, for the introduction. Welcome to our webinar session. I'm Mardia from IPSB Technology. I'm the Vice President of Sales for IPSB, has been with IPSB for the past 8 years. So for the past 8 years, I've seen so many customers of mine, regardless from media entertainment, broadcaster, production houses, and YouTubers. And I've seen customers from public sector as well as education that have the similar issue with big data. So when we talk about big data, it's either video, audio, pictures, images, PDF, and things like that. So what happened with most of our customers, we found out that there's a similar issues. There's 10 issues related to the media workflow. When I talk about media, it's not only for media entertainment or broadcasters, it's across most of the industry nowadays, because all the industry will have video or again, all the big data media in their workflow. So number one is the user are not driven to use any application because they have too many apps that they can use. They can use a free one, they can use on-premise servers, things like, just for example, like WeTransfer, Google Drive, and then they have Microsoft and things like that. So there's no one single application that manage it all. So there's too many application and sharing application. So they cannot manage. Number two, there's so many versioning. It's difficult to maintain the file consistency because too many versioning. For example, we have 10 people involved with a single project. It's very hard for us to know which one are the final version. Number three, there's no metadata, no standard of metadata. So everybody just key in on their own. Like for example, I might use a short form in certain words and another person would use a numeric for certain things. We make it no standardization of metadata. And number three, the data leak and security. So file can be shared by anyone. So users doesn't have the confident to use it because they want their file, especially with public sectors, to just being shared out there. Number 5, they need to maintain manual purge of the media asset, and then they don't have an archiving policy. So what happened is that your storage will never be enough. So today you think that maybe 1 petabyte of storage is big enough. Tomorrow you feel that even 100 or tens of petabytes is actually not enough for you. The journey of managing a media asset or a storage is actually starting from maintaining the asset itself. And number 6 is no collaboration of workflow. Always people work in silos. So nowadays, especially with whatever that's happening right now with COVID, people need to work remotely and people need to collaborate more often. So the issues come about with no collaboration workflow. And I think number 7 is very interesting because you need a lot of luck to do a file searching. It's very hard to search a media. Even for me, if I want to search certain files that I have in my laptop, it's very hard because I need to remember what the name of the file that I put in, then only I can search the media. So a lot of luck needed. And number 8, you not be able to access the media asset immediately because probably your asset is on premise. And again, with today's world, you work remotely, you not be able to access the media, which is on premise. And whenever you put a media on a storage, we call it a storage black hole. So you just push all the media. So you have like maybe hundreds of your team member or maybe even 10 of your team member, just push the media into a storage. Then it become a storage black hole because nobody be able to know what is inside that and which are the media that is important to keep, which are the media that you need to push out. And number 10 is file missing in action. There's always a case that's happening that, in fact, suddenly that one simple media asset that is not being used for 12 months, suddenly you want to have it back and the file went missing. So these are the 10 issues related to media workflows. If you look into your business, the media actually impact your business one way or another because search is very important. It impacts on the cost because when you want to do the asset, it's actually a cost for you. When you want to develop the content, it's actually a cost for you. You need to know the historical of the media asset. You need to have a future proof of the media because you need to know that your asset sits on the right application so that it will last for the next 5 to 10 years, that you know you don't have any issue at the back of your head thinking like, oh, am my asset is still there? Do I have the media asset for me to use next year? Probably. Again, it's a time consuming. You're going to lose a lot of time if you don't know where your media are. And number 6 is actually this environment or this workflow will help you to create new business opportunities. But if you don't have it, you're going to lose some of the business opportunity out there. So these are the impact for the business. And this is why you need a data lifecycle orchestrator. We call it DALO. So what DALO consists of, so you can see from the source, whether it's from media, whether it's from video, PDF, and things like that, we will incorporate a production asset management for you to manage your production team member. We're going to have your media asset management for you to archive or manage the content. And you can have digital asset management for managing all the PDF, file sharing, and things like that. And with that, for the next 5 years, we'll see the involvement of artificial intelligence as well as machine learning. So these are the combination of the data lifecycle orchestrator that at the end of the day, you will be able to distribute your content, you'll be able to broadcast your content, and probably storefront is where you'll be able to sell your content. This is where revenue will be able to come into your organization. So the next one, we are looking at actually what really the customer or the consumers looking for in DALO. So the features that usually people talk to us would be number 1, whether the media be able to browse powerfully and even without the metadata. Because as you know, like I mentioned earlier, each one of us will enter the metadata differently. And sometimes even a person will enter that metadata. It depends on that current situation or month. I will enter the way I want to enter last month, and this month I will just enter a short form and things like that. So there's no consistency. So the powerful browser to search your asset is very, very important. And the catalog of users of media to display them with a simple interface. So you need a very powerful interface that you'll be able to just search your media, and it's very easy to use. So commonly people are so used to things like Google Drive and things like that. So we want to have something similar for the consumer, enterprise consumer, or post-production house, or YouTubers like you, to just search the media with a simple display panel. And we also be able to do whether the system be able to do transcribe, speech to text, and we'll be able to handle a wide range of video format, whether it's video, graphics, audio, and things like that. And with today's world, it's very important for us to enable it not only on the laptop or a workstation. You also want to search from your mobile phone or your iPad, because mobile phone nowadays is very powerful. You can even do your editing of your video from your mobile. And the last but not least, usually in organization or even a small team, you need to have an approval, comment section, and things like that. So those are the kind of features that a lot of customers or consumer out there like you are actually looking for. So yeah, so I think that would be a bit of brief of the overall overview of data lifecycle orchestrator.
Great. Thank you, Mardia. Next, please welcome Sam Bogosh from Axel AI.
Hi, I'm Sam with Axel AI, and I'll be talking about the power of radically simple, remote, browser-based video search. Our company, Axel AI, was founded around the idea that people should be able to search and manage their video content from wherever they're located. And we've been able to do this over more than 8 years, and at this point had over 600 customers worldwide. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve? So many people in this industry spend a lot of their time just trying to find clips. They may be on loose external storage, they may be on their network, but wherever the files are located, it's extremely difficult to find them and to basically use them without having huge amounts of information written down or otherwise logged to help you find that footage. Most of our customers have hundreds of terabytes of material, and some have even more than that. And it's a broad problem inside the industry for how people can find their stuff and repurpose it, especially in today's world with social media and all the challenges of needing to repurpose video on an ongoing basis. The fact that most of this content is essentially hidden is a real problem. Overlaid on top of that is the problem that since the arrival of COVID, many people cannot come into work as conveniently as they could before. So a lot of file transfer, which used to happen with kind of loose hard drives, they would just hand things back and forth, and now it's not so possible. So I'd say across the industry, both in corporate video, sports video, church video, and broadcasters, everyone needs to learn to work in a new way and find their material through their browser. And that's what Axel lets them do. So one way of looking at this is that if you look at the growth in video, which has been very dramatic, probably 20% per year, and you look at the even faster growth in artificial intelligence and machine learning, these areas are now beginning to overlap. And so there's an area where the combination of artificial intelligence and modern computer software can really help solve the problems of video for the first time. If you go back, say, 15 or 20 years, all of this material was on tape. It wasn't even digitized. And of course, that made it impossible to find. You had to know which tape it was on, hand someone the tape, and so forth. About 10 years ago, a transition really took off to bring that over to digital media. So then it would be on a hard drive or an LTO tape. But even then, there was no good way to search the contents of these devices. And so you still had essentially the same problem that you had with videotape, which was that nobody knew where anything was. You could rewind faster, of course. There's no reason you couldn't jump around inside the contents of a disk. And an LTO tape, you can also move around and get different media. But if you had hundreds of these or even thousands, it's hard to imagine how you could keep track of where the content was. With the power of AI, you can now search all this material across all of your storage in an automated and highly efficient way. Another way of looking at this problem is, how big is the market for storage in media? How many people worldwide need this type of storage and then need to use it efficiently? And the answer is that it's expected to double in the next 5 years, from about $8 billion this year to about $16 billion a year of storage in 2025. And over that time, of course, the problems will only grow. That's the dollar amount, which is doubling. And as you know, over time, a dollar buys you more and more storage. So the amount of storage during that time will probably be quadrupling or growing even faster than that. And underneath it all, despite these huge numbers, working with video is really like hunting around in a cave. Most of the teams that we work with have never had a good way to find and reuse their content. It's kind of amazing, because these are some of the world's top studios, sports teams, political campaigns. And if you ask them how they manage the material today, it is very, very basic. Perhaps your team has the same kind of problem. If you're in a corporate environment, you may have a boss who says, hey, I really need that clip from last year. If you find yourself rummaging around and looking for this on hard drives or hunting around inside a folder structure, then you could benefit from what our software does. And the other thing is, even though this is very difficult, and even though the challenges are extreme, the number of teams doing this type of work is also expected to double in the next 5 years to more than 500,000 teams worldwide. And as I've mentioned, this extends across many different walks of life, but video is becoming such a crucial part of life. And of course, COVID has only accelerated that as well, because video is one of the main ways that people can still communicate with each other, since in-person presence and conferences and trade shows are really not happening the way they used to. At some point in the future, they may resume, but I think these habits of using video more are going to be deeply ingrained and will probably continue despite that. So in short, we help video teams remotely search their stuff. Here's one example of our customers. This is a broadcaster in Boston, American Public Television, and they have many years of footage from public broadcasting here in the US, which they then distribute to broadcasters all over North America and the world. And their business until March of this year was almost completely done within one office. It was a floor in an office building in Boston that is still their headquarters. But of course, when March came and the COVID rules came in, they all had to find ways of working from home. And luckily, they had our software. So they were able to basically enable external access. Everything in our software is done through your browser, whether you're working on premise at your facility or remotely from home. It's all done in the browser. So they were able to just enable external access and immediately start working from home within 1 or 2 days. And their team, which was 40 people, were almost as productive working from home as they'd previously been working at the office. It was a very dramatic change, but they were able to do it because they had our software. And this diagram kind of shows further how this works. Typically, there's a central storage area. Then there's a ring of post-production workers who may be in edit rooms, but they may also be working from offices or from home. And then in the outer ring, there are more people who can be logged in from literally anywhere. And all of these people with our software can access the material, and you can set permissions so that they can access only what they're supposed to see. So for instance, if you have internal clients who are working on a project, you can set it so that they only see the contents of that project. Our software works from the folder structure that you have, so we don't change the way you store or organize your material. We just make it much more searchable and much more accessible through your browser. Now I'd like to have my colleague Neil Blake demonstrate our software and give you a sense for how it works.
Hello, my name is Neil Blake and this is Axle AI Radically Simple Media Management. Axle AI is presented in a web browser. We can access the application by entering a username and password at the login page, and this will take us to a home page. We provide customers tools to help them find their content, whether it's video, audio, or graphics. We also present the whole folder structure that we find in storage. We present the different folders in catalogs that can be seen here on the right hand side. By selecting different catalogs, we can see different content. By moving the mouse across the clip, we can see the contents of a clip without having to open it. And if I select a clip, we can open the clip in a player window and then play the clip here. What we can also see here is an example of a time-based metadata field, often called a marker, or in Axle called a comment. And on the right hand side we have our file details. Axle supports a wide range of frame sizes and different frame rates, and we can see this information here. Below the file information we have our very important metadata. This is the custom metadata that's purely for this particular catalog, and we can design custom metadata to fit every customer requirement. I have permission to edit the metadata, so I can click on edit here, and then I can start to select the different fields. Here I have a text field, and then a checkbox, a drop down menu, another checkbox. We have a date field that I can use to set, and we have a number of other text fields and drop down menus. This can be customized to be anything that fits the requirements of the project. Once the metadata is saved, it becomes searchable. And we have two different search tools. We have a simple search, so I can come up here, I can search for tram, and then I can add more keywords to further narrow the search down. So I can go from a large number of files to a small number of files very quickly indeed. Users can also save these searches as personal filters, metadata fields, and particular catalogs. So in this case I'm only going to search in the Audi catalog, and I'm going to search for car type. Because this is a preset tag, I can then select the tag from the drop down list. And on top of this I'm going to search for an additional field called car color. By typing in the start of the words I'm looking for, the system will suggest the field I'm looking for, and then I can select the color that I want to search for. I can also start to type the color I want to search, and again the system will offer me the different variables. And clicking search will provide the results for this particular search. Once I have the search, I can select a clip, I can change the metadata in that clip, or I could start building shot lists in a bin to export to the editors. In our bins, we can combine shots from different catalogs that we have permission to see. Here we see a number of clips from Amsterdam. The area of white below the thumbnail is the entire clip, and the blue area that's marked here is the subclip in time and out time that's been marked. The comments and the in times and out times will be transferred across to the editor. Axle also supports a wide range of audio files and graphics file formats. Another very important feature of Axle is our AI tools. This allows us face recognition, image recognition, speech-to-text transcript, and character recognition. An example of the face recognition, if I was to search in this file for Joe Hart, the goalkeeper, I can filter Joe Hart, see he's here in 2 locations, then I can jump to the location and have a look, and I can also jump to the second location that he's in there. Of course, Joe Hart is quite famous, so the system recognizes him, but I can teach the system who unknown faces are. Speech to text, will take, in this case, the commentary track from this game and turn it into text that I can then edit, and I can also export this as a subtitle file or as a plain text file. If you have any more questions, please contact us on info@axel.ai. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was very insightful, and we learned a lot from Axel. And I think Axel has come through during COVID. I think that's amazing to see. So just would like to know further, what are the software that your customer currently using at the public television?
Yeah, thanks, Mardia. So for instance, American Public Television, they're using Adobe Premiere, and many of our customers use Adobe Premiere. It's very popular right now. Probably, I'd say more than 50% of the professional editing that we see out there is done with Premiere. And we include support for Adobe Premiere as well as other Adobe applications in our software. So we include what are called plug-in panels that work with Premiere and After Effects, but also Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign, essentially all the major Adobe applications. We also have some additional support for things like automatically finding content within PDFs, which is another important part of the Adobe workflow. But I'd say Premiere is probably the #1 application that people use with our software. #2 is probably Avid. We have quite a number of customers who use Avid Media Composer, and we have native support for Avid MXF OP Atom Media in a module that you can add to Axel. So with that module, it's a slight additional price. You can now support not only Premiere, but also Avid workflows and native Avid media. And then the third common editing platform that we see is Final Cut Pro 10, which, after an early slow start, after the end of Final Cut 7, is now gaining in popularity. And we are definitely seeing signs of more and more use of it, particularly as the new Macs are getting more and more powerful. There's kind of lots of good reasons for people to try Final Cut again.
Yep.
And unlike the period maybe 5 years ago where it wasn't working so well for professionals, today we're hearing some pretty good things. So in short, we support Adobe, Avid, and Apple Final Cut Pro 10.
That's interesting when you put it that way, because in Asia, especially, a lot of our editors using Final Cut Pro, and the search of YouTubers right now, which not only the broadcaster and post-production houses, the YouTubers actually mostly are using Final Cut Pro because it comes with it. It comes with Mac. So it's interesting to see how Axel be able to collaborate with all those softwares. And I think right now the flexibility to use and to choose your editing software is very important as well, because it depends on what's your objective, and as well as your panel is already embedded or native embedded on the Adobe Premiere as well as Avid. That's interesting to explore. So my next question would be, what would be the storage that most your customer will be using, and which are the categories? Because I understand it will be different for broadcaster or post-production houses compared to probably people like YouTubers again, or like you mentioned, you have a lot of customer in churches and things like that. So what are the different of storage that is available out there and suitable for Axel?
Yeah, good question. If historically there's been a mix of different types of storage in the editing world. You had very high-end storage called SAN, which usually involved fiber attachments to the workstations. Then you had NAS, which was slower but used Ethernet. And then you had direct attached storage where you could essentially connect a hard drive directly to your workstation. Now, all three of those still exist, but the one that we are seeing more and more of is NAS, network attached storage. It's becoming very cost effective, and because of the power of 10 gigabit Ethernet, it's now possible to do real HD and even 4K video editing from your workstation using NAS protocols. In the past, it was only possible using SAN and fiber channel. And then, of course, direct attached storage is very common, where people just plug in hard drives. Now, in addition to that, in the last few years, cloud storage has become more and more popular. We don't really see that for main editing storage right now. Generally, it's used for kind of tier 2 or tier 3, so kind of nearline or deep archive storage. And in those areas, the cloud can be a very good choice. But even there, it is also an interesting trade-off with things like LTO tape, which are still very, very cost effective. So about half of our customers are doing cloud archiving, and about half are doing, I would say, tape archiving at this point.
Yeah, that's interesting to see, because I think right now we are in the midst of evolution as well, because like you mentioned, COVID happened, and then things change, and people would like to do a remote editing. So hence, I think cloud plays a big role in terms of handling all those remote editing. And since you guys are available on cloud, I think it's also important to highlight to the audience out there that it should be a flexible environment for you, because hybrid environment, you need to have your direct attach or your NAS and your cloud. If you're a bigger organization, you will have like hundreds of edit suite. This is where Axel will be able to help you, right?
Yes, exactly. And our software is basically storage agnostic. It works with almost any type of storage. So you can have a combination of these different storage types, and Axel can search across all of them. You can search for current work in progress material, but also archived material that can be in the cloud or on tape. And as people move more of their work in progress to the cloud, which is starting to happen, especially with 5G and some of the faster connections, we can give you kind of one global view. You don't have to worry, oh, is that local or is that in the cloud? You just search for it in Axel and get the asset. It's very powerful. And if you compare it with, for instance, just having the storage in one place or a number of different places, one of the biggest challenges of cloud storage is finding stuff, because they're stored in individual buckets in the cloud. Each file is basically its own bucket. And then once you put it in that bucket, if you want to see what's on it, you have to bring it back. In Axel, we make a low resolution proxy, which we stream to you. And in that way, you can see what's in the cloud bucket storage.
So if I put it correctly, I just plug in all my storage to Axel, and then Axel be able to read it all.
That's right. It essentially scans your storage continuously and finds the material that's there, and then presents it to you in a browser interface.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Sam, my next question would be, so we already covered the editing software, we already covered the storage. What about the file format? Is it for everything, or it's limited to certain number of file format?
So Axel, by its design, is completely open to file formats. One of the things that's unique about it compared to big, expensive MAMs is that it's simpler, because all it does is scans the files that are there. We don't try and manage your files or tell you to use a certain type of file. If you're using camera formats, raw formats, you can bring those in, Axel will catalog them. If you have a working format, like say XDCAM, or DNX, or any professional format, ProRes, we can handle those files, because we're just scanning the file system, and then for each type of file, we can handle it a little bit differently. Most of our files, we use FFmpeg and other standard file processing tools, but in some cases, we use proprietary ones, like for instance, the Red Cine libraries for R3D raw files. And in each case, we're able to make the low-res proxy, understand the files, and present the metadata without forcing you to change how you work. It's really, really critical, and it applies not only to video files, but also to image and audio and publishing files. We essentially can scan almost anything and present it in our interface.
Yeah, I think it's great to see, because all those files that you mentioned, like video, probably audio, PDF, or things like that, the growth is significant year on year, and you can't manage your file with just using like drives or file sharing apps anymore, because you're gonna get overwhelmed with the amount of data or the amount of files you need to manage. So I think this is where Excel come to the picture, where you'll be able to browse and search much more simpler, and then you'll be able to manage all your assets, your media assets. So that's the important part of the file format, right?
Yes, and I would also say, because we can look inside these files, we can help you find the important material in the file. Like you might have 2 hours of footage from a shoot. In fact, you might have many hours of footage from a shoot, and there's really only a few minutes of important material that you consider worthy of reuse. Well, because Axel is inspecting inside the files and creating these low-res proxies, we can also analyze those, which of course leads to the AI question. And then you can say, I want to find all the places that this person appeared in the file.
Interesting, you already touched about AI. So can you explain further how AI and machine learning will be the game changer in the next years for Excel and also for post-production or YouTubers or broadcaster?
Definitely. So before you had AI, if you wanted to tag your material, you would literally have to pay people to sit there, watch the material, take notes. Often
manually.
Manually, they would put it in a spreadsheet or a Word doc. Then the Word doc would have to get attached to the file later. It was a big mess. And so for the first few years, our company has been in business now for 8.5 years. And I would say for the first about 6 of those years, the only kind of tagging was manual tagging. And even though we had hundreds of customers, very few of them had the time to do it properly. It just wasn't common. Because of AI and machine learning, you don't have to devote a person to this. You can have the computer do it in the background continuously. And so as it finds things in your material, it can tag them, it can put that information in our database, and you can search for it. So you can look for a person or an object or something that someone said. And this takes huge amounts, many hours of footage, and breaks it down into much shorter pieces that you can actually search, find, and reuse. You can imagine if you had many hours of footage and you knew there was good stuff in there somewhere, you might still decide not to reuse it because it was too much work to find the correct portion. And now that's no longer a problem, especially because of transcripts and face recognition.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see more detail on the AI and machine learning. So by having said that, I think that will be our next webinar as well, because we're going to touch about just specifically on AI and machine learning, the potential and how we'll be able to change the industry and how AI and machine learning be able to benefit the users out there. So that's very important. So I think, yeah, we're going to talk more about that the next webinar session, right, Sam?
Yes, no, that sounds great. Thanks so much, Mardia.
Thank you.
Thank you to both our presenters, Mardia and Sam. We hope you, as our viewers, enjoyed the session. Feel free to give us feedback or comments on more topics regarding digital asset management. Thank you, everyone. Stay tuned for our next webinar series.